This is nuts. Final Starship launch prep. SpaceX Starship booster ready to land on the tower? Next-gen tower building draws to an end? Is the next-gen Starship complete? Will Blue Origin's New Glenn ever launch? We do the analysis. Tiny space startup Sierra is attempting to buy big player United Launch Alliance? My name is Felix, welcome to What About It, let's dive right in. Starship updates. This is the South Texas Starbase, where SpaceX is developing the future of spaceflight, the mind-boggling Starship. And it's especially mind-boggling to us space nerds. How is this even possible? Let's start with Starship Launchpad A, the only active Starship launchpad in the world. SpaceX is attempting to catch a skyscraper-sized rocket booster while it falls from space on its next flight. Some crazy testing is needed to make that work. SpaceX is willing to do what it takes, but are they on time? This week was filled with crazy testing at Pad A. Let's do a little review. Booster 14.1 was recently returned to the launch site for more catch testing. Catch testing? SpaceX wants to ensure that their first catch test on Flight 5 goes smoothly and we don't see a 220-ton rocket slamming into the pad. The tank used for this hadn't seen any testing yet for this round, and the chopsticks, the arms used to catch Starship, only really tested above the tank. No slapping, but that was about to change. The chopsticks closed around the vehicle and the landing rails extended. This was followed by the chopsticks moving up and slamming the arms into the vehicle's catch pins, applying incredible pressure. The chopstick arms are equipped with these small cushioning rails. They're extendable upwards. The plan is for them to slowly lower as the small catch pins hit them on landing to slow the vehicle's speed. Think of them like giant pillows for the booster to land on. This is important since the booster weighs around 220 tons when completely empty. Approaching at breakneck speeds, it would be tough for those arguably tiny catch pins to take all the inertia. Put a pillow below them in the form of those dampening rails. It should be easier. The rails also include these cushioning tiles, which we talked about in a recent episode. They add even more dampening for the booster during catch maneuvers. None of this has ever been done before. SpaceX would like to know whether their catch procedure and catch arms are up for the challenge. Perfectly understandable. This is why they didn't stop there. Soon the chopstick arms were positioned around the vehicle again. This time, however, they were fully opened. Quick flashback to when this test tank was originally here at the launch site back in July. You'll remember that it underwent a series of slap tests. This was accomplished by one arm being stationary against the vehicle while the other extended and quickly swung in to hit the tank. The one-armed slap. This, and then you go like, slap. That procedure was repeated, except for this time both arms were used. The two-armed slap, so violent. Yep, that is right, it is some good old-fashioned Hulk thunderclap action. The two arms collided against the vehicle and some visual oscillation was seen, however no more noticeable than in the first round. To me, this is a good sign that the profile has been reworked. It is now a lot less violent on the vehicle, especially now that two arms are involved in the action. After this, the vehicle was lifted off of the orbital launch mount and rolled away down Highway 4 to the rocket garden the very same day. No visible damage to the test tank or to the arms. The next few days will tell if the arms were damaged. We'll simply be able to see repair crews or not. Booster 14.1 will lay the groundwork for a successful catch of Booster 12 during Starship Flight 5. It is a major change compared to all the other flights. Those who have seen the high-altitude flight tests might remember the anxiety when a Starship test vehicle aims for the landing site and you just don't know if it'll make it or not. That's what this will be like again. I can't wait. But let's not let Orbital Site A take all the action. We have another tower at Starbase after all. One that is almost complete at that. So where did we leave off last time? There were 2 more segments to go. As usual with SpaceX, they didn't even give us time to celebrate the stacking of Section 7 of 9, as they were already on to number 8. But before I tell you about that, we've looked into our channel metrics and there are over 2 million returning monthly viewers who have not subscribed yet. Help us improve the channel even further by double checking that you've hit that subscribe button so you don't miss our updates. And while you're at it, give us a like and become a wise supporter. Why? Because you'll gain access to a massive amount of extra content. With it, you get access to daily new Starbase photo galleries, including all those we've posted so far. Satellite, aerial and ground photos, more than 400 posts in the past 2 years, along with up to 7 picture galleries per week. Insights, chats with me, you name it. And no matter how much you decide to give, everyone gets the same supporter content and access, no tiers, you decide what it's worth to you, you rock. As we discussed in our last video, Section 8 is slightly shorter than the first 7, as it and Section 9 house the upper pulley system and the crown block for the chopstick arms. Smaller segments but more internals mean about the same weight as on Tower A, since SpaceX has chosen to outfit the segments with their essential components before stacking, unlike on Tower A. This makes it a lot quicker too. Section 9's rollout will likely follow very soon, and we'll finally see the completion of this new behemoth. Completion of tower stacking, that is. As I mentioned, the tower still awaits the installation of the drawworks, which lift the chopsticks, as well as other significant additions. However, it does seem that SpaceX is finally fleshing out the base of the tower, as they have begun adding the protective steel plates around the outside. The tower speedrun continues. For comparison, it took NASA's contractors almost 4 years to build the second SLS mobile launcher. As usual, it ran into massive problems, needing repairs and fixes, and in the end costing almost $1 billion instead of the planned $383 million. But I'm sidetracking, this is Starship. These plates on the lowest part of the tower protect the essential components inside the base from being damaged by the immense heat at liftoff. We also saw the construction of these structures on the opposite side of the tower base. They look identical to Tower A and house important plumbing systems, access points, and the elevator. This is an essential step since workers need to refurbish the tower in case of damage, as seen on Tower A. However, I don't think it'll be long before we see this tower fully complete, and only the lack of an OLM will prevent them from launching. A new era is coming to Starbase. Tower B aside though, there is more action waiting for us at the production site, also known as the build site. Just a short trip up Highway 4 away from the coast, we arrive at the build site and are met with one of the most beautiful views in rocketry. Let's follow Booster 14.1 to the Rocket Garden. SpaceX chose this location to store prototypes that are either no longer needed or are not currently being worked on. However, we're actually not here to look at Booster 14.1. We're going to look at another strange prototype located here, the infamous Ship 26. As I mentioned in the last episode, this prototype was moved to Mega Bay 2 for, well, I didn't say scrapping, and I'm happy now that I didn't. You just can't trust Ship 26, never. It was not scrapped, instead it was rolled here to the Rocket Garden. So what happened? Why did they even do all this? What mystery is next for Ship 26? When the vehicle still resided at Mega Bay 2, workers were spotted removing all 6 Raptor engines from the odd naked ship. This is why scrapping would have been likely, but no, there might be another reason. I see 2 possible reasons for them to remove the engines. First off, they may want to keep this vehicle on display, since we know it will never fly, and they have shown interest in putting some vehicles on display in the future. We do know it will never fly, or do we not? Removing its engines would make it easier to move around and display after all. But there is another theory that may be more likely. This vehicle has been SpaceX's universal test article since its very first static fire, and they may intend to keep using it. SpaceX may not want to risk losing a Block 2 ship during a static fire test, as they have a limited number of next-gen ships in supply. Currently, there is only one that we'll talk about in a moment. I'm sure they'd rather see them fly than do ground tests, but they'll soon need to static fire Raptor 3 on a ship. Instead, they may choose to outfit Ship 26 with these newer engines and static fire them for a real-life test, rather than only hot-firing single engines. This would most likely come later down the line, as SpaceX doesn't yet have enough of these engines as far as we can tell. If correct though, Ship 26 might just be the first to receive Raptor 3s. Ship 26's wild story seems to continue. What do you think? What's next for Ship 26? Be sure to let me know in the comments. Let's talk about something that's currently happening in the high bay next. Ship 31 continues retiling. This is the hardware for Flight 6. When this prototype first began stripping and retiling, it was quite speedy, but it seems that it has slowed down slightly since then. We've seen less progress. As you can see, only a couple extra tiles have been added atop the nose cone, and barely any have been used to cover the welds, which remain naked. This was to be expected, however, since SpaceX has to put much more care into these fragile areas than it does with the bulk of the vehicle. We saw this on Ship 30's tiling when the progress slowed down and workers took more time and effort to get every tile right. It's important because the welds and nose cone are areas where tiles are very difficult to apply. Without a perfect covering, the ship won't be able to endure the immense heat of re-entry undamaged. Ship 30 and Ship 31 are likely the last Block 1 starships we'll see fly. Why? Because Block 2 is more than just a concept. It's already in production. We recently spotted new development regarding Ship 33, the first Block 2 starship. It's currently located in Megabay 2 and it's actively being stacked. As I've mentioned before, starship stacking takes place from the top down, meaning that the nose cone is the first segment to be stacked and the engine section is the last. This is why we've seen lower and lower sections slowly rolling in and being stacked. Now it's received one more, which makes quite a big milestone for this essential vehicle. Starship's liquid methane fuel tank sits on the top with its liquid oxygen tank beneath. This means that the liquid oxygen tank comes after the methane tank and is the second to last step in assembling the ship. This is why we were pretty glad when we saw SpaceX rolling the final piece of that tank into the Megabay for stacking. It was subsequently stacked and the ship now only awaits one remaining piece. This piece I'm talking about is the engine section of the vehicle, which accommodates the Raptor engines. This means they are incredibly close to finishing this prototype, and in a couple of short weeks it may be ready to receive its engines. The question if it will in fact receive Raptor 3 engines will be answered. What do you think? Will Ship 33 receive Raptor 3 engines? Starship, Starship, Starship. It's what makes the spaceflight industry turn. It is the biggest thing to happen right now. But isn't there anything else? How's the space industry going to compete? After all, they'll have to. There are a few competitors. One of them is Big Blue. Blue Origin is an aerospace company founded by billionaire Jeff Bezos, you know, the Amazon guy, and Blue has long been a sleeping giant in the industry. So much so that there are jokes about them never reaching orbit, or a while back that they'd never even deliver an engine to ULA. And I'm not a fan of those jokes. Why? Blue was once one of the most influential players in space exploration in the early 2000s with its New Shepard rocket being developed for suborbital reusable space tourism. However, they were quickly passed by companies doing much more in space, such as going fully orbital, which New Shepard can't do. This only changed for a moment when Blue Origin announced their next-gen heavy-lift rocket, the New Glenn, in 2016. That was 8 years ago. The issue is that the rocket's development moved relatively slowly, and it was overshadowed by larger rockets such as Starship. This recently changed when we began seeing segments of this new mega rocket around Blue's facilities at Cape Canaveral. It began to make us wonder when the new rocket would finally launch, since it had been delayed from 2020 to sometime this year. Of course, these segments were not official flight hardware, but they were still important pathfinders for testing ground and flight hardware. After these brief sightings, we saw increased activity on the whole program. From rapid testing of these Pathfinder vehicles to simulated recovery operations, it seems Blue Origin has completely shifted into go mode, and we are now closer than ever to seeing the first inaugural launch of the New Glenn rocket. So when's the beast going to launch? Currently the NET, or no earlier than date, is set for September 29th, but it could still be pushed back. The problem is that until a couple of days ago we hadn't seen any of the official flight hardware, aside from a couple of cryptic posts on X from Blue. They are not very open to the public, which can be interpreted as if they don't show anything, there's nothing to show. But little did we know. Fellow space YouTuber Tim Dodd was invited on a tour of Blue's New Glenn processing factory led by Bezos himself. While the tour unfortunately doesn't reveal much new information, likely due to Blue's secrecy approach, the interview did reveal some important tidbits about New Glenn's readiness. Watch it when you're done with this episode. So let's ask the big question. When is Blue Origin finally going to launch New Glenn? Are they ready? Will it take another 8 years? Let's take a detailed look and combine all the info we have. The rocket remains in pieces, but is relatively ready. Let's examine each piece and its location. When the tour was recorded in May this year, the second stage remained completed, but without its two BE-3U engines. From a post by Blue Origin CEO David Limp dating back 7 months, we know that the engines were test fitted at some point. So it might just be that they weren't attached at the time of this particular tour. The interstage section sitting directly beneath the second stage also appeared in the interview, and it still seemed unfinished. This section is outfitted with 4 aerodynamic fins, which help steer the vehicle down from space and through the atmosphere for a landing on a drone ship. Similar to SpaceX's grid fin approach, they act as aerodynamic surfaces. SpaceX decided to use grid fins, as tests showed better performance during hypersonic flight. This is a 3D print of a regular Falcon 9 grid fin. It's attached to the booster like this when the rocket launches, and then it flips up and then it moves like this to steer the booster on descent. Blue Origin chose canard fins for New Glenn despite SpaceX's result. It'll be interesting to see them perform. We recently also saw it in a test stand undergoing testing of its reaction control thrusters in an X-post they published on August 7th. However, 2 of the most important pieces, the booster's main tanks and the aft section, are still missing. As mentioned in the tour, the Flight 1 main tank section is located in a different building, which will supposedly be toured in part 2 of the interview. Blue Origin showed the aft section in action even before the tour. 6 landing legs were extended to different degrees. Blue Origin posted this on X on August 7th. The video likely shows a simulated landing, and as you can see, it is quite a complex setup, unlike SpaceX's approach of minimizing parts. And the aft engines also still need to be installed. Although this is looking quite optimistic for Blue. They may be able to make their September 29th launch of NASA's Escapade probes to Mars happen. However, that date is still a no earlier than date and could slip back, but I would expect a launch definitely before 2025. However, one other SpaceX competitor might be bigger than Blue Origin soon, and it has recently made some headlines. United Launch Alliance is responsible for developing 2 of the oldest rocket families in the United States and a brand new next-generation methane rocket, Vulcan. Though Boeing and Lockheed Martin have been considering selling ULA for some time now. You may have heard rumors earlier this year about them looking to sell to Blue Origin. Finding a buyer has been a long-term pursuit, and they have still not found anyone willing to make a contract. Allegedly, Lockheed Martin and Boeing, the 2 companies that make up ULA, were not able to find a deal with Blue Origin, which meant that they had to keep looking for someone to purchase the company. This has led to new reports that another company wants to buy them out. 2 insiders have said that ULA is currently in talks with the Sierra Nevada Corporation, the same masterminds behind the Dream Chaser spaceplane that we discussed in a recent episode. This would be quite the deal. Sierra Space would exponentially grow overnight. The issue is the price tag. Boeing and Lockheed Martin want $3 billion, which seems far-fetched for the relatively tiny Sierra Nevada Corporation. How would they pay for this massive billion-dollar company in the case that a deal was found? Even though it might seem impossible at first, Sierra Space can still accomplish this. The first way is for Sierra to file for a huge business acquisition loan. Then they could buy the company in full and pay it off over time. But this comes with its risks. Sierra would have to be sure that it can make back the money to pay off the loan with the new company. If it can't, it risks going bankrupt. They'd also have to put down some type of collateral, which would likely be their own assets, which also poses significant risks. The second option would be to partner with another company to split the funds. We have no evidence that this is a possibility, but if another company were involved in the talks, Sierra might consider this option and be okay with splitting the company with an acquisition partner. The final option could be that Sierra plans to purchase only certain installments of ULA, such as processing facilities. This one seems slightly less likely, since Boeing and Lockheed Martin don't seem interested in keeping any of the company. It would offer a more flexible deal for Sierra Nevada, and if Fuel A can't be sold to anyone, this option might be a last resort. It would allow Sierra to purchase only facilities and infrastructure that they deem worthy, especially for their own projects, and leave the rest behind. This is all pure speculation, and as we've seen in the past, a deal might not even be reached, but this is certainly something to keep an eye on, as this could be groundbreaking in the industry. That's it for today. Remember to smash that like button, subscribe for more awesome content. This is what fuels the algorithm, and it does help us immensely. Check out our epic shirts in your favorite Space Nerd store. A link is in the description, and if you want to train your space IQ even further, watch this video next to continue your journey. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you again in the next episode. Spaceflight, the mind-boggling, and no matter how mama, re-entry undamaged. E.T. on... Oh. Asida, I am British now.